Garage sales are great places to find interesting objects. I'm a prop maker, so I'm always on the lookout for unique items I can use in my craft. Old things, new things, things I didn't even know existed. I purchased an item at a garage sale a few years ago that I'll never forget. Mostly because I have trouble sleeping now because of it. See, back when dinosaurs roamed the earth, people didn't have CDs or iPods. They used cassette tapes. I was at a garage sale looking for useful items when I came across an old cassette player that I figured I could scavenge some parts from. Underneath the player, there was a dusty cardboard box full of cassette tapes. I had no interest in buying any of the cassettes, as I meant to dismantle the player, which would render the tapes useless to me. As I turned, however, one cassette caught my eye. It was bright yellow and shoved into the back, not neatly organized into a row like the others. Curiosity got the best of me, and when I dug the yellow cassette tape out of the box, I flipped it over in my hands. The only marking on the cassette was a piece of masking tape with big capital letters written in marker. The Butterman. I chuckled. It was such a goofy name, I assumed it must have been a kid's story on tape or something. The woman running the garage sale saw me snickering and approached, smiling. "Oh, that's one of my favorites. My son used to absolutely love it too. Yeah, I'll tell you what, if you buy that player, I'll throw that tape in for free," she said, smiling at me the entire time. Looking back at it, her entire demeanor suggested that she was putting on a show for me. Like she was making the tape desirable, even though she really wanted to get as far away from it as possible. Oh well, hindsight is 20/20 and all that. I agreed to take it off her hands for her. It was free, and I figured I'd give it a listen before I tore apart the player just to find out what the hell a Butterman was. I took my purchases and loaded them into my shitty old car. I ended up stopping at a few other sales that day and loaded up on my materials. It was a few weeks before I finally dug the player out of my car along with that goofy yellow cassette. I hauled the player and the tape into my workshop along with a bunch of other items from various garage sales. The tape caught my eye again. I had completely forgotten about the Butterman tape until then and decided I'd hook up the player and see what it was all about. I opened the machine and found that an old tape was still in there from the last time it was used. 1,000 years ago, probably. It was some jazz cassette that I casually tossed into the garbage. I loaded up the yellow tape, putting it in the wrong way at first, as it had been a lifetime since the last time I'd used a cassette player. I hit the rewind button to make sure I got the full experience, but the tape was already fully rewound and ready to go. I remember smiling when I hit play on the machine, fully expecting it to be a silly song or maybe a cute little story. I fucking wish. It started off as a slow, grinding noise, like someone was scraping two rocks together. After about 30 seconds of this, a choir of what sounded like school kids began humming. It sounded like there was a construction site on the other side of whatever room they were humming in. Table saws spinning and metal clinging together. All that good stuff. Eventually, the kids began to sing. The cadence of their song was all wrong. It was like they didn't speak English and were instead phonetically sounding out the words as they sang. "If you know this song, then sing along, but be sure he doesn't hear you. He is long and yellow, and he's a nice fellow, so invite him over for dinner." This repeated 4 or 5 times, and then it was over. I remember it was definitely a what the fuck moment. I was also disappointed that I didn't find out who the Butterman was. I just knew that he was long, yellow, and nice. I popped the tape out and tossed it in the trash, along with the jazz tape. I spent the rest of the night working on my project, and I caught myself humming that tune. As weird as it was super catchy. After I decided to turn in for the night, I was brushing my teeth, still humming that bizarre tune. I got in bed, and right as I turned off my light, I heard what sounded like someone banging, feverishly, on my neighbor's door. I thought it was weird, but my neighbors at the time weren't exactly on the straight and narrow, so I rolled my eyes and fell asleep. I woke up the next morning and had a pretty rough headache. I went about my business as usual, still humming the Butterman song. As I began prying the cassette player open, I noticed there was a tape inside. It was that same unmarked yellow tape. I remember swearing I'd thrown it into the trash, but didn't think too much of it. I decided to give it one more listen for the fun of it, and since I already knew the words, I sang along this time, trying to match the broken cadence of the singers. I was still singing along in my workshop when I heard banging on my front door. I wasn't expecting anyone, but I thought maybe it was the mailman needing me to sign for something. I opened the door and saw no one. I leaned outside, looked around, and saw nothing out of the ordinary. It must have been a neighbor kid ding-dong ditching. That night, I threw the tape in the trash again and made a mental note that I had done so. Of course, the next morning when I walked into my workshop, the tape was waiting for me on my workbench. I double-checked that all of the doors were locked so I could rule out someone playing an elaborate prank on me. I left the tape alone for several days, not really sure what to do with it. I didn't even think to be worried until I woke up one night to hear that damn song playing on full blast in my workshop. I ran downstairs and shut off the cassette player before clearing my entire house room by room. Nothing. I was alone. I returned to bed that night, and that was the first night I had one of the dreams. The dreams always start the same. I'm alone in my house, and all the lights are off. The darkness is overwhelming, though. It's not a natural darkness. It's something more suffocating. Usually, my first impulse is to find a light switch, but they're all gone. Smooth wall has replaced where they should be, and I'm left to wander around my dark house. At some point in the dream, I run into it. It looks like a 7-foot-tall, emaciated, and jaundiced man. I'm not an anatomy expert, but I know he has way too many ribs just under his sickly skin. His head is as elongated as his body, and his face is completely blank, save for a small hole where a mouth should be. The Butterman. Sometimes I'd find him folded up like origami in cupboards, and other times he'd be on the ceiling. He never did anything in my dreams, but I began losing sleep from the stress. They weren't normal dreams. They felt real. I reached out to the online community, but no one would take me seriously. I don't blame them. I would ignore someone ranting about the Butterman too. Eventually, a paranormal investigator with nothing better to do reached out to me and asked if he could come take a look at the tape. He was a pudgy little guy with glasses that kept slipping down his greasy nose. He ran a battery of tests using tools that looked like props I've made for low-budget sci-fi films. I didn't even care. I was willing to try anything at this point. The paranormal investigator began asking me questions. Where did I get the tape? Who had the tape last? Had I tried playing the tape in a different player? I answered those questions to the best of my abilities, and the pudgy guy finally asked if I would play it for him. I obliged, and as soon as that song started up again, I began absent-mindedly singing along. A loud banging echoed through the house. It was like someone was punching the walls with incredible force. The paranormal investigator hit the stop button on the player and looked at me. I looked at him, and we stood in silence for what seemed like hours. Eventually, he simply asked, "Coffee?" I agreed, and I drove us to the local 24-hour restaurant, seeing as it was well past midnight by now. We ordered our coffee and sat in silence until it arrived. When it arrived, the paranormal investigator began explaining what he thought was going on. Basically, what he said was that he felt that the tape was a more recent summoning ritual. It used to be that demonic entities were summoned through rituals outlined in books, but this ritual was outlined in the tape. Singing along to the song was making the Butterman more powerful with each verse. When I asked what the Butterman even was, the investigator replied that he's probably what most people would call a demon. He then followed that up by saying that he didn't mean a hell beast or a devil or anything like that. It was just something from another plane of existence that overlaps with ours in the form of the mysterious tape. I thanked the man and decided to stay in a hotel for the night. I also went to throw the tape into a river that night, but couldn't bring myself to do it. Believe me, I tried. I tried. I'm living in my house again, and I still have the tape. I keep it locked in a gun safe I bought specifically for that purpose. I don't have the dreams as often as I used to, but I still get that song stuck in my head every day. It's like torture at this point. I can't get it out of my head. It drowns out conversations I'm having, and sometimes it has become such a disabling condition, I get maybe 4 hours of sleep on a good night. I'll still hear banging some nights. At this point, I want to sing the fucking song 1,000 times until I can ask the Butterman what the fuck it wants.